Welcome to our webinar, Technical Writing and Team and Project Management. Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is David Peter, and I'm a technical writer here at Pronovix. I joined the company last year, and I'm going to be one of your hosts, together with my colleague Adam Balog. I worked as a freelance translator and interpreter before becoming a technical writer.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adam, and I'm happy to be one of your hosts for this session. Uh, I've been with the company for almost 5 years now. Earlier, I delved into the world of digital humanities. During my time at the University of Szeged, I was part of a team that developed a database allowing users to easily search for Hungarian poems from the 17th century based on their meaning and context. It was a project that combined technology with language in a really exciting way. Currently, I'm working alongside four talented individuals in the tech writer team here at Pronovix. I'm a technical writer and DevOps engineer, and together we try to bridge the gap between complex technical concepts and clear, concise communication.
Yeah, and speaking of bridges, today's webinar is all about building connection, overcoming obstacles, and navigating the intricacies of effective teamwork. So take a look at what we'll be covering. We start with a casual storytelling session. This is basically a history lesson on how our technical team was founded and how the company and the team changed over the years. And then we switch to how we bridge the gaps within the team as well as between the tech writer team and other teams within the company. We'll talk about customer documentation from administration and planning to publishing, as well as some estimation strategies. We also talk about the importance of internal documentation and collaboration with developers. We examine these from personal, technical, and workflow sides. In the end, we quickly sum up what we have talked about and have a Q&A session if we have enough time. You can ask your questions in a written form as well in the chat, which we will collect and answer in a week or two in form of a blog post. Let's start with the history lesson.
Um, when I joined the company 5 years ago, things were different. uh, for technical writers. Back then, there wasn't a specific team just for technical writing. We were part of a content team, which meant we had to handle various writing tasks like blogs, newsletters, and marketing materials alongside technical documentation. It wasn't clear what made technical writing different from other types of content writing, so to say. Then one of the founding senior tech writer left, leaving a gap that we needed to fill in. This led the formation of a new technical writer team with me and another colleague joining new members, but our roles weren't clearly defined. So we mainly focused on writing user guides and feature documentation for customers, with some occasional work on internal documents. We used Markdown for writing, of course, although the team had previously preferred Google Docs. We wanted to establish ourselves as a specialized team, focusing solely on technical documentation. So to do this, we took on more responsibilities. Alongside user guides, we became more and more involved in internal documentation tasks and even offer technical writing services to customers. To make this change, we also started using the Toxis code method for custom documentation, just like developers did for our internet documentation, and we use for other documentation projects. We were on track to becoming independent and specialized team. However, as the company grew, new challenges arose, and in this session, we will share our journey, discussing the obstacles we faced and the progress we made along the way, and we are still learning.
And that's especially true to me. As I said, I only joined last year and I had no previous experience as technical writer. So I rather brought a linguistic, let's say, package with accompanied with enthusiasm to learn something new. I had no previous experience working in a self-organizing environment either, at least not in a company setting. But it's quite similar to working as a self-employed individual. You have to organize your day, you have to keep track of your tasks and responsibilities in order to contribute to the common goal of your team. I think I quickly adapted to this new environment and I picked up the pace quite well, at least I hope. The hardest part was to learn the technical side of our work, but everything can be learned, that's for sure. Besides that, I joined the company in an era of change, not just company wide, but especially regarding the technical writing team. The past 9 months was quite a journey, but I'm confident that the switch was worth it. We have a very talented team, and it's good to be part of this change. So let's dive right into our webinar.
So let's start with customer documentation and working in implementation teams together and working with project managers. So in the earlier days of the company, when our team was smaller, we all understood how crucial it was to provide clear user guides to our customers, a clear documentation. But as we grew and people came and went, things got a bit blurry. As we expanded, the company formed implementation teams to handle delivering solutions to our customers. Unfortunately, this new setup left us technical writers feeling a bit left out. We ended up guests in these teams, waiting for project managers to tell us when documentation was needed, but it was incredibly convenient, and we were accustomed to it. When we were smaller, PMs would just simply come over to our office and update us, providing all the necessary details to kickstart tasks. However, not just the growth of the company, but COVID also made it challenging to maintain such connections. Communication gaps can result in technical debt due to unclear roles and responsibilities, creating silos within the teams. When tasks aren't clearly assigned, important work may be missed, leading to inefficiencies and neglected priorities.
Yes, and I think every team plays a vital role in our collective effort. When one team encounters difficulties, it impacts the overall performance of the company. If you don't communicate clearly about what we require from one another, it's really hard to meet the expectations. Our solution to this was to go after the information until it became natural to involve us in discussions regarding the development, even if we are just there to take notes for the documentation. Boundaries and responsibilities are unclear. I think having unclear boundaries and responsibilities are really important issues, and they are connected to the challenges of working in a self-organizing environment. Everyone has unique responsibilities that the other team members don't have. But you could ask, is it really their responsibility? I think ideally there should always be a person, not only one person, but at least one in a certain context, who knows what information is relevant to whom, and this person should make sure that the information won't get stuck somewhere. It is possible to solve this with good documentation if it's easy to find. It should be a shared responsibility to make these accessible to each other. Also, even the proactivity is a great asset. I don't think we should overdo it. For example, it should not be our responsibility to check a colleague's calendar for calls that could be relevant to our job, because we had to do it because that's how we could keep ourselves in the loop to be involved every aspect of the development process.
And to overcome these issues from the personal side, we jumped into implementation teams. This helped us to be more visible, for sure, made it possible to share knowledge across teams, gather feedback, and stress the importance of keeping the documentation up to date. However, we soon realized that just joining wasn't enough. We needed bigger changes. We saw the need for clearer and more organized ways of working, as well as a change in the teams and the company culture. So being proactive and willing to take action are the key assets in this situation. And to add to the confusion of the technology side, while the implementation teams used, for example, Redmine for managing their task, we stuck with Trello, another kind of ticketing system. This difference in tools made it even harder for us to work together. Non-developer teams at Pronovix typically use Trello, and some still prefer it, even though I think, or we think, technical writers need to stay very closely connected with the developers. So we saw the need to find a common platform to help us communicate better in the future.
Exactly, and we weren't using platforms that developers were using. We weren't attending stand-ups of the implementation teams regularly, and thus we got off the radar. Nobody knew what and how we were doing exactly. I'm not saying I had any issues with those platforms. It was rather a problem of double booking and lack of transparency, because many developers did not have access to our tickets and ticketing tool.
So to bring our backlog and make sure that we can keep our documentation always up to date, we changed the way how we work. So if we took it in more detail, of course, technical writers work on different projects, which made it tough to keep track of all documentation tasks for us, at least in Redmine, in the first period of time. Because we also had internal tasks and other random jobs to handle, making it even more complicated to have a common environment where we can have all the related issues. Although Trello was easy to use, for us at least, it had its limitations like double bookings, because if the tickets already existed in Redmine, we had to create a copy of it in the different environments. And also the restricted access made developers' life hard to access to our tasks. So we switched back to Redmine from Trello to be a more integral part of a company communication and ticketing, making it easier for everyone to keep track of what we are doing. And to simplify things, we created a special filter in Redmine just for our team. It showed all the tasks assigned to individual technical writers across all projects. This made it easier for everyone to see what needed to be done across the company. We created also a dedicated user group in Redmine to revive our backlog and make it transparent and accessible for everyone. And I will tell you about it a bit later. So even though the documentation was part of our company process, uh, some team members didn't always see it as a top priority, of course. They thought of it more as a bonus if there was time and money left over. This mindset made the gap between us and the implementation teams even wider. You may ask, how could this happen? So I would say that because we failed to recognize how quickly things were changing, and we didn't take action sooner. We assumed that we could stick to our original way of working, believing that the system or the people around us would naturally accommodate.
But the changes in our company structure made it clear that we needed to integrate documentation better into the work of implementation teams. Going forward, we were making sure everyone understands how important documentation is and makes it the priority in their work. But that's not clearly black or white, is it, Alan?
Yeah. For example, we noticed that many user guides and intended commission or documentation in general did not follow the development, and many features remain undocumented. So,
Yeah, that's why we started to have weekly meetings with the project managers of the implementation teams to stay in the loop. We also attend the weekly planning calls of the implementation teams, and we started to create documentation plans as well to track our depth. Thus, we were able to organize the updates needed to tackle these depths. We also have logs for this project manager and technical writer weekly calls that we update regularly during the calls.
and as I mentioned, we created a new user group in Redmine and asked project managers to include it in all projects, which means that whenever a new task pops up, the PMs assign the task to this group first. This is the default assignee of this task. The ticket appears on our dedicated board, on this filter board, and that creates a central list of things to do. So so eventually this is our backlog now. We made a checklist to help us keep track of each task's progress. It includes steps for each stage of the job. We include it in the issue tickets as well, and it makes the progress of the task even more visible. So even everybody can see what's going on, even if the ticket is still in the in progress phase, so to say. This helps us stay organized and make sure nothing gets missed. And every task ticket has important information like links to related tasks, documentation plans, estimates, and any updates made along the way. Using common platforms has helped us work better with other teams. Now, all project managers follow the process, making things smoother. So, in general, it doesn't matter which system you choose. Just make sure it's the same what others are using, and that you make the most out of it. And keep an eye on tasks and make sure everything's on track.
And the clear workflow is also important. We made our documentation workflow clear to others, which is planning, drafting, writing, reviewing, publishing, and iterating.
So, if we're talking about planning in this phase, we create or ask, for example, from the PMs for task tickets, and it's for tracking with the effort. Uh, Fortunately, other teams write acceptance criteria. In some cases, leave a lot of context documented in the ticket, making our life much easier. Uh, then we write or update the documentation plans and estimate the effort. Then we conduct interview sessions with the subject matter experts, and in the yeah, where these are recorded sections. During, of course, we made our drafts, and uh, during that time we test what we need to document.
Okay, let's talk about planning in more detail. I think we agree that to provide quality work, we need to prepare before getting down to business. We use the documentation plans I mentioned earlier to this. We use Google Docs for these plans, which are basically logs. They have a dedicated place in our Google Drive. The plans and the assets are easily accessible in this drive. We have well documented naming convention for our Google Drive and as well as a short folder structure map to make sure everybody can find what they need. The project-related documentation plans are linked to the redmine issue of the project. They contain the date of review, which indicates when it was last reviewed, estimation, which is an estimation for the missing features only, a list of typos and errors that should be corrected, the current state of the guide, which is basically the table of contents, and this way we could easily track the documented features. We also have a list of missing features that should be documented, and also a section for project-related calls and notes. And here we can put all the records and project-related calls to make it accessible for later use. It takes about 1 to 4 hours to create a documentation plan, depending on the complexity of the project. But on average, it usually don't take more than 2 hours. And speaking of numbers, estimation is also a very important part of this planning process.
Yeah, but when it comes to estimating how long documentation task will take, mm, I often find it tricky. Each task is different, we all know, with its own challenges. Sometimes the task might be complex, but we have everything we need to tackle it. Other times it might seem easy, but we are missing important resources, making it harder to complete. We know that technical writing involves more than just writing, and we also see it. It includes various activities like research, interviews, testing, drafting, and more. Each of these activities takes time and adds to the overall effort. In the past, our estimations were really rough and not very effective. Later on, we tried to create a better system. We based our estimates on data from our time tracking tool from last year. But these numbers can change depending on factors like the size of our team, other changes within the team, and how long it takes new team members to get up to speed. To make our estimations more accurate, we're trying out the so-called T-shirt size method. I'm pretty sure that most of you are familiar with that. This helps us categorize tasks and estimate how long they all take more effectively. Uh, our system includes 5 stages. The extra short task, we say that small updates without any kind of dependencies. And by dependency, uh, we mean that anything that affect other chapters or other documented pieces, for example. So any small updates that doesn't affect anything is can be considered as an extra small task. General fixes that can be done by running an automated script or can be done manually, but in a really short time, it also an extra small task. And for example, document a feature piece, so to say. Short tasks are features without dependencies or small up with some kind of dependencies. Medium effort can be a complex workflow or feature documentation without dependency, or a minor feature that has dependency. Large effort is a complex feature or workflow documentation with high research and testing time, and a fully customized and complete user guide is okay, it's naturally an extra large effort. And we usually also add an extra 20% of time on top of our estimated time to account for any unexpected issues that might arise. This buffer helps ensure that we can still deliver the task on time, even if something unexpected happens. After we've made our estimation, back to the project manager, and if the PM agrees with our estimate, we proceed with the task. If the PM doesn't agrees with it, then we have to reiterate it, of course.
Yes, and this is where drafting comes into the picture, actually.
Yeah, and we create drafts based on the information related issue ticket, the knowledge we collected during the testing phase, and the interviews recording. And during this drafting and writing phase, we use tools and environments we prefer, whether it is Google Document or a plain text editor, it doesn't matter. If that makes your life easier, then go ahead with it. Eventually, the publication platform will decide the fate of the document. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and when conducting interviews with subject matter experts, be it an architect, developer, or project manager, we make sure to follow these initial steps. Number one, to ping the contact person and book a slot in their calendar. And a good advice, don't hesitate to book a time slot without waiting for their approval, because it might be a while before a busy subject matter expert sees your message, and in the meantime, others might schedule calls to your preferred time slot. Number two, and apologies in advance, but this will be a little bit longer than the others. Prepare your questions for the interview. Of course, we have plenty of questions to ask when in such an interview, because many things could be relevant to the given task. Such questions are, but not limited to, the following. So, for example, what does the new feature do, and how does it help our customers? How will the customers use this feature? Are there any technical details of this feature that customers should be aware of? How does this feature work with other parts of our product? Are there any problems or limits that customers might face during the use of this feature? When will this feature be the most helpful to our customers? Do you have any tips for customers to make the most out of it? How will we know if customers like using this feature? And last but not least, maybe the most important, what is the deadline? By asking similar questions, we can make sure to thoroughly understand the nature of the documentation, the target audience, where it should be published, if it's accessible for external use, etc. Okay, moving on. Number three, the demo itself. Jump on the call with your colleague during the book time slot. And last but not least, number four, don't forget to push the record button. This may sound trivial, but we always record these sessions because it's always useful to have this for later use. And again, I can't stress enough the importance of the deadline. Without it, the one who assigned the task, at least this is our opinion, that the one who assigned the task agrees that it will be sorted lower in terms of priority if you don't set a clear deadline.
And after collecting the necessary information and getting into context, we can start writing. You can, for example, review previous feature guides or any kind of documentation that you have previously uh, from other projects to get relevant information and insights. Uh, you can use the tools you prefer. You can utilize single sourcing techniques from to streamline content retrieval and ensure consistency. Um, of course, it is also important that create or use methods to make the documentation or the drafts accessible for other team members to make collaboration easier. You can, as we mentioned, you can use Google Docs, so to say, for drafting and reviewing, if it makes collaboration easier for others who don't prefer to use, I don't know, or to read Markdown or anything. It is also possible, for example, yeah, as I mentioned, really to single sourcing techniques and automate what's possible, of course. Um, and for example, if it makes easier, create a PDF version, for example, that you can hand over to the project manager or whoever would like to review your drafts or your documentation. Uh, Publish it in the staging environment first. So those members can also check the results who don't have access to Git or whatever version control system you use or other platforms. And check it on the live environment after the publishing. This is also important that the final review, this also should happen on the live environment as well, so to make sure that it looks well. And also schedule review rounds uh, where you can make sure that the documentation is up to date and check it regularly. And we also include these schedules in the documentation plan. They should happen even if the project didn't receive updates during the given period of time. And our UX research team periodically gathers user feedback to ensure our documentation meets the needs of our end users. If any issues are reported, such as users being unaware of the guide or encountering errors, we take action to address them. Well, it's in the planning phase, so we are planning introductory sessions to help users navigate the user guides effectively, aiming to streamline onboarding and enhance user engagement.
Yes. Okay, now that we have covered the entire customer documentation process, let's move on to our next topic, understanding the importance of internal documentation and how technical writers can collaborate with developers effectively. So why is internal documentation important? Well, for one thing, it's for sharing knowledge. Internal documentation helps team members share what they know and learn from each other. It makes sure everyone in the company can access important information about our systems, processes, projects, etc. It's also for helping new team members. Documentation makes it easier for them to get started. It gives them information about our systems, tools, coding rules, and how our projects work. This also helps them to get up to speed quickly and start contributing right away. Internal documentation also helps to keep things consistent. Good documentation makes sure everyone follows the same rules and practices. This helps to keep our code clean, reduces mistakes, and makes it easier for everyone to work together. And also, it encourages collaboration. Documentation is like a meeting place for sharing ideas and working together. It helps us all see what's going on and work better as a team. But creating and keeping up with in documentation can be hard because developers are often too busy with coding to spend time on documentation. It takes a lot of know-how to write documentation as well. If you don't keep docs up to date, they can become useless easily. So to deal with these challenges, we can set rules for making and updating docs. We can make documenting part of our work routine, also use tools to help us write and update docs faster. And we can encourage everyone to share what they know and help make docs better. Years ago, technical writers like us weren't sure where we fit in with developers. We had to find a way to get more involved.
So on the personal side, if we're talking about internet documentation, we started by making sure developers knew our role was to help and support them. We got involved in their daily work to gather the info we needed. Before we could help developers effectively, we had to understand their needs and challenges. We did this by learning and actively engaging with them. At first, we read through the existing documentation. We focused on how it was structured and written, even though it was sometimes confusing because, well, people use different formats. Um, to connect with developers, we used Slack, our main communication tool. We joined their channels and set up alerts for discussions about documentation. We set keywords for terms, documentation, user guide, doc, whatever, And this helped us join in and share helpful resources. Like some ninjas, we arrived in suddenly in different pieces and just pasted the correct documentation that they were discussed, and this made our place a bit stronger. So over time, developers recognized their value, and some senior ones even taught us even more about their work. Some may think that developers aren't talkative. Well, just everybody else, they like to speak about their interest a lot. So if you want to establish a good relationship with developers, start asking them questions and listen actively. As you have the basics, you can engage even more. So you can make two friends with one gift, uh, learn and make allies. And don't forget you have friends, or it is time to make some. But it wasn't just our efforts that led the change. Fortunate turn of events also played a significant role. A few years ago, our managers introduced tension and practice cards to collect feedback. It turned out many developers struggled with outdated or hard to find documentation, not surprisingly, and not enough people were contributing to it. After this session, two senior developers asked for help to upgrade our internal documentation process and platform. We fixed the problem of inconsistent formatting in our documents and created style guides to keep everything consistent. This laid the foundation for further improvements, like using automated tools to check our writing. To address the developer's original issues of outdated or hard to find documentation and lack of contribution, we took action on the technology front as well. While we technical writers updated the content, the developers set up a lightweight Jamstack, JavaScript APIs, and Markdown platform as our new internal documentation publication layer. We migrated the content to GitHub for easier management. Naturally, our developers preferred the Docs code approach, so we didn't have to introduce very new processes. On the platform, we added a direct edit link for easy updates and keyword search option to help users find what they needed. We also implemented various feedback mechanisms and documented the way to contribute. Um, yeah, sorry.
This switch in technology allowed us to change the layout and structure of the site easily. This flexibility empowered us, the writers, to introduce new sections or rearrange existing ones. It was significantly step. It was a significant step towards better collaboration with developers. Yeah, and now that we are familiar with the new stack, our next goal was to educate our team members and address any remaining workflow issues. While Doxa's code worked well for us, tech writers and developers, we realized it could be challenging for others who are not so familiar with Markdown or didn't have access to our repository. To address this, we created a guide to help everyone contribute, and it is possible to raise an issue ticket directly from the platform. We have templates to make this easy. We made it possible for others to create new documentation in Google Docs too. The technical writer team can help when it comes to formatting these before uploading them.
We also offered assistance to move content to ensure everything stayed in one place. For documents involving many experts, Google Docs was a useful tool for collaboration. We made placeholder pages on our platform with summaries and links to Google Docs for later use. But we wanted to make sure that the developers who are looking for some information, they will find some clue where they could reach the original content, even if it is in a draft. To involve the technical writers, the owners let us review and approve changes in our GitHub repository. The involvement of technical writers ensures that our documentation follows our guide. For checking errors, we use Whale. We have it integrated into our text editor for automatic error detection while we work. We are improving this by creating Whale rules for GitHub Actions. It's currently a work in progress, but if we finish it, we'll automatically review the content and will detect any style guide violations.
Yes, and we also streamlined and made our internal documentation efforts more transparent by using Slack. We created a dedicated Slack channel where developers can request internal documentation related tasks, discuss issues, and more. To ensure nothing important is missed, we continue to utilize Slack's keyword system. Additionally, we integrated our backlog directly into the header section of the Slack channel and provided a convenient link for raising issue tickets. When a developer clicks the link, it automatically opens a Redmine issue ticket template with the necessary metadata pre-filled and assigns it to the tech writers group. Mm, The bot channel notifies us whenever the ticket is created on our board, and our workflow ensures that tasks are assigned to an owner promptly. We rely on our developers as subject matter experts and to assist us in collecting the necessary info. Over the past few years, we have built strong connections with the developers who willingly support us because they trust that we also address their needs.
And we also implemented a strategy to ensure our documentation remains accurate and relevant over time. The current campaign is called Spring Clean Your Docs, a month-long challenge aimed at reviewing and updating our internal documentation. We spread the word about the campaign through our most frequent Slack channels, emails, etc., reaching everyone in the organization. Each team is tasked with reviewing 4 or 5 documentation pieces within the month. They will assess, we expect them to assess whether the information is still accurate, needs updates, or should be removed. This campaign isn't a one-time effort. We'll conduct regular documentation reviews to maintain its quality and usefulness. By prioritizing this campaign, we are emphasizing the importance of our documentation efforts with the organization. Most of the team happily participate in the campaign and share their insights quickly. For the others, I plan to send out a reminder later today or maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, and it's quite an important thing to do. Okay, well, hope you haven't eaten yet because it's a wrap. Pun intended. To sum it all up, our journey has been about transforming how we approach technical documentation. We evolved from a general content team to a specialized technical writing team, focusing on collaboration and transparency. We integrated closely with developers and project managers to streamline our workflows and ensure documentation aligns both with internal and project needs. Our ongoing efforts, such as the scheduled documentation review campaigns, demonstrate our commitment to maintaining accurate and relevant documentation. And by prioritizing teamwork and continuous improvement, we are enhancing our documentation practices to better support the company's objectives and our customers' goals.
So about the takeaways. Um, well, share information with teams to foster collaboration and efficiency. Familiarize yourself with other teams' workflows and collaborate on creating guidelines if necessary. Use the same platforms as other teams and mark activities in your calendar for accountability. Improve estimation accuracy to better plan and manage documentation tasks. Build relationships with developers to understand their needs and support them effectively.
Yes, and simplify contribution processes and ensure consistency across documentation. Automate error detection and review processes to maintain quality. Conduct regular documentation reviews to keep content accurate and relevant, and highlight the importance of documentation efforts within the organization to maintain focus. And last but not least, we are curious what's your idea about this. If you have any questions or anything to share, just go ahead. We are all ears now, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you.